You ever come upon a diecast car that really doesn't have anything wrong with it? It's just ugly. Don't go away. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And today, there's not a lot wrong with this casting. This is a doozy. The paint is decent. It could just use a good cleaning and stuff, but there's really nothing wrong with it. In fact, the wheels are perfect. It's just butt ugly. It's terrible. So I am going to see if I can do something with this to make it look better. Let's get to work. All right, we're going to start here by going ahead and getting this casting apart. And one of the things we're going to use is this jig from my friend Eddie. It has been a lifesaver. I can't count the number of times it's come in handy. I've got the casting positioned. I put a little drop of oil on each of the posts, and then using my Vix Bits and shielded drilling, I can go ahead and drill the ends of the posts off so we can get this car apart. Now, you often wonder why I have to use a screwdriver to get these castings apart, because I am really careful about how deep I drill. I don't want to drill too deep and damage the base or drill through something I shouldn't. So, I probably don't drill as deep as I need to. So, a lot of times I'll need a little help prying these castings apart. That's what's going on there. Now, as you see, this is an unusual setup in that the wheels and axles are just kind of laid in there, which is really super cool, and it's going to make this restoration go pretty easily. We've got a plastic fender and interior piece. We've got the glass. Then we have the roof that just kind of dropped out after we started getting this apart. And it's a little bit bent right here at the end. I'll see if I can straighten that out, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. And then finally, we have the main part of the body. So with the casting apart, I used my Vix Bits and I ran it over each post to kind of clean up the ends and to dimple them. Now I could just take my small drill bit and drill down into the post using a little dab of oil. Makes all the difference, I got to tell you. But I'll drill down in there and prepare it so that I can use my tap and tap handle and cut some grooves so that these posts will take a screw and ultimately allow me to put this casting back together at the end. Now, earlier in my life of restoration, I too struggled with drilling out and screwing these posts back together. I used these little fake rivets and some epoxy and would glue them together, and I really hated that. Okay, there was a lot of reasons. The cars didn't go together well. There was a lot of reasons for it, but trust me, if you struggle with posts, it's worth the effort to get past that. So if you have to go buy a bunch of junk cars and practice getting cars apart and drilling out the posts, it'll be worth it in the long run. All right, that should work. Okay, so now we can go ahead and break out the citrus strip, and we just have that little top body part. That's the only part that has to go in the citrus strip, because that fender part and stuff, it's all plastic. We're going to treat it the same after this in as far as painting it goes. But, obviously it's a solid color burgundy plastic, so there's nothing to do here. So we just drop the main body part into the stripper and put it aside and let it do its thing. Okay, so we can go ahead and keep busy while the body is in the citrus strip by turning our attention to the base. I'm going to first hit it up with a brass bristle brush to see what I'm dealing with, because here's the thing. I'm going to want this to be really, really, really shiny. The reason for that is it has a lot of really important details that need to be almost chrome-like. The bumpers, the exhaust tubes, things like that. I really want them to sparkle. And so the brass bristle brush is just kind of evening everything out and helping me get a true look at what's going on here so I can decide, can I polish it? Or am I going to just have to clean it up really well and use Molotow Chrome on this? So, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get a feel for what's going to happen. So, after the brass bristle brush and taking a look at this, I've decided it's not in that bad of shape, and I think I can polish this up really, really nice. And I've had a good stretch of polishing bases lately because I've started using this it's like a Scotch-Brite wheel on my rotary tool. And that really kind of gets us pretty shiny and makes it easier for me to actually polish it to a high shine. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to give this a really good once-over with that little Scotch-Brite wheel and the rotary tool. Okay, so the base is coming out really, really good, and it's encouraged me to push forward with the path I've chosen. So I'm going to break out the Flitz and a brand new buffing wheel in my rotary tool, and I'm going to polish, because like I said, the features that are going to be so important to making this casting look great are molded into this base, and I really need it to shine. Now, despite the fact that the glass is kind of protected under a roof and inset and whatnot, it's still kind of grungy. And since I have the Flitz out already, I'm going to go ahead and polish the glass up now as well. So a little dab on a Q-tip, and I'm just going to polish this all up first. Then we'll take it into the gauzy. Once I start kind of getting a squeaking sound as I polish, I know I can kind of move on. And so out comes the microfiber cloth. And I'm telling you, you could stop at this point if you don't have gauzy because it looks amazing. The gauzy is just going to take it to another level. Now, if you don't have gauzy, my question to you would be, why not? Okay, it's not that expensive. It lasts forever. And it just really makes your glass look so good. Totally worth doing. All you have to do is you take the glass, you dip it down into the gauzy, and then put it somewhere in a dust-free environment where it can sit and dry. So I give it a dip. I'm going to wick off the extra because you don't want big puddles of it clumping up and stuff. So we wick off the extra. And then I'll put it in my little onion saver so it'll dry and it'll come out great. Now, I've decided on a two-tone paint job on this because this is a classy card and it needs a classy paint job. And I did not dislike the burgundy. I disliked Mattel's version of the burgundy. So the one of the colors is going to be a burgundy, which I don't have. So I'm going to mix some using my Tamiya paints. And to get a burgundy, you really just use red and add a little bit of blue to it, and then you'll get a nice burgundy. So I'm going to mix up some paint to get the color that I like. Now, I have to remember to mix enough because in this case, remember I told you that I have to treat the base with the plastic base with the fenders and stuff the same as the body. Well, that's what I mean here is because going forward now, I've got to treat them as if they're one thing, okay? And I can no longer pay attention to whether they're metal or plastic. It doesn't matter. They're both going to get the same paint treatment so it looks right. Because that's one of the reasons it looks so bad right out of the packaging is because that plastic looks, well, like plastic. No longer. We're going to paint it. All right, so we're over at the paint booth, and the first step is to prime the body and the fender part, the little interior body part. They both have to be primered, especially that plastic piece, okay? If you don't, it's going to make the paint have a dickens of a time to stick, so I'm using Tamiya Fine Primer here, a white one, so it'll help the colors pop. All right. And not only will it help with the adhesion of the paint, it's going to help with the consistency. Okay. Because right now the base is burgundy and the body is silver. And if I just paint it over this, I stand a very real chance of ending up with two different colors here. So by priming everything into this white, I know that the paint is going to go on consistently. All right, so with the primer dry, the first thing I've got to do is I have to paint the base color. In this case, it's going to be like a gunmetal. It's one of the new colors, new opaque colors from the Redline shop. It's a gunmetal gray. It's kind of a metallic-y gray. It should look amazing with the burgundy, at least I hope. I guess you'll be the judge of that at the end, but I think it's going to look amazing. And frankly, I kind of was excited about trying one of these colors. So we're laying that on over the entire base, the entire body section, I should say. And then we will set that aside to dry. So it was vital that this be thoroughly dry. So it's been over 24 hours. It's spent about an hour on the heating lamp because we're masking off all the lower color where the gunmetal is going to remain. So I'm using a built-in seam line that Mattel was kind enough to provide us with. And I'm just masking off everything below that line before we head back over to the paint booth. All right, so here we are. We're back over at the paint booth, and you remember the burgundy I mixed up? This is where it's going to come into play. We are laying it down on top of the plastic piece and the masked off body. And you'll notice that I did, before I started laying this down, I primered the plastic piece with white to make sure that it would come out with a consistent color. And that's going to bring up an interesting situation in when I get back to the upper body piece, because now the whole thing is gunmetal silver, right? So if I just paint this burgundy over that, again, I stand to have two different colors. So after I'm done painting this base, before I can paint the upper body, I'm going to have to prime it one more time. That way it is this burgundy going over white primer. All right, that way I get consistent color, because that's one of the things that I didn't like about the original casting is the fact that you can see such a huge difference between the plastic and the painted parts, and it looked like garbage, and a car as classic as a Duesenberg deserves better. So yeah, just remember that, you know, if you're doing a match color over a top and bottom piece, you got to make sure you're going over the same color. So anyhow, here we go. So it's important when you're painting over a masked off job to make sure that that paint is taped off well and the edge of the tape is sealed. So I burnished it down with a toothpick to make sure that the edge is nice and tight to the paint job. And the first layers, the primer and the paint color, are going on very light and very dry so that they seal the edge of the tape without bleeding up underneath it. So you got to go really easy as you're doing this. Once that is all sealed off, you can start to build up and then put your paint down in the normal fashion so you get the same kind of finish. But you really do need to go with an easy touch when you're painting over a taped off masking job. So just remember that. So remember, what I've said is that I like to come and get the masking tape off as soon as possible, but you got to be careful that it's not too early. So what I do is after I lay the paint down, I clean out my airbrush and shut everything down, and then that's my cue to immediately remove the masking tape. Now you notice I'm pulling back at a fairly steep angle and into the new paint. And the reason for that is I'm using the tape as I pull it off the body, sort of like a way to cut the edge of the paint, okay? And that's why you got to do it early enough. You know, you want it to be set up, but not so dry that it's flaking or something, all right? So as I'm pulling this tape off, it's kind of acting like a little knife and cutting a nice clean edge for me. And there is a beautiful two-tone body. Looks great. All right, so after all the paint was dry, I went ahead and I clear coated the base section here and the upper body. And now we can go ahead and do some detail painting. And I've decided that this is going to be burgundy with silver, and I'm going to use tan for the seats and, you know, the roof and stuff like that. So I've got a little flat tan Tamiya paint, and I'm just going to hand brush this in and get the seats all a nice Tamiya brown. So as I work on the detail painting, I'm doing the seats, front and rear. I'm doing the little trunk that's going to be at the back of the car. I'm going to put some paint over the roof piece, again, because I don't want it to look like plastic, all right? So I'm going to put some paint on top of the roof and just really add some life to this. I'm also going to do some bare metal foil on this casting, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And it's really going to just class this thing up. Okay, there you can see the seats. They've gotten a couple coats of the paint, and I'm doing the trunk that sits at the back of the car. I'm also going to do like a dark brown around the edge of the steering wheel, so it looks like it has like a walnut colored wood steering wheel. Yeah, it's going to look really nice. And okay, so you see I'm doing the trunk, and you see the little straps that hold the trunk at the back of the car? I'm not going to forget about those. You thought I was going to forget them, didn't you? Well, I'm not. Okay, so this is bare metal foil, and it's like a chrome adhesive foily stuff, really thin, and it's great for doing trim on models and castings like that. And I've already applied some strips to the trim on both sides of the upper body. It looks great. And now what I'm doing is I'm cutting a couple pieces out so I can apply it to the straps on the chest at the rear of the casting. Now, what would I tell you about bare metal foil? It's not a newbie thing, okay? It's not something you should just jump into, and it's certainly not something you should do after as much work as I put into this casting. It's something you want to practice on a place where you really don't care so much. On the sides of the casting, I laid it down and then used a brand new X-Acto blade to score around the detail so I could peel away all the scrap. For the trunk, I'm actually just cutting really, really thin strips, and I'm just going to lay them over the top rather than try and cut away. So there's different ways you can do this, but it's definitely not something that you want to try on something you really, really care about. This is something you definitely need to practice. I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm not great at it yet, okay? It worked out fabulous here, but it was a struggle for me. It took a couple attempts to get it right. It's a practiced skill, is what I'm saying. But in the end, it really can step up your builds. Okay, so we can go ahead and get this together. We've put the glass into the body, and then it sits down the body over the base, and it kind of locks all that together. And like I said, the wheels and the axles just kind of lay in there, and then it gets sealed in. And I was fortunate that this casting had perfect wheels and axles. I didn't need to replace them. I just cleaned them and putting them right back in, and they're going to look amazing with this casting. It's perfect. So I'm really happy about it. We're getting this thing together, and I could not be happier with the way it has come out. So let's take a look and see what we got. Well, there she is, and this is what a Duesenberg should look like, not what Mattel put out. I'm sorry. It's an insult to one of the most beautiful cars ever made. I love the way it came out, and I hope you loved this video. If you did, please give it a giant thumbs up, click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss one of my videos. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. I'd love to know what you think about this build, and especially the way Mattel did the Duesenberg. What are your opinions? Because I think they really dropped the ball on a beautiful car. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I hope the rest of your day is phantasmagorically wonderful. Until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions saying, be good.